like most, if not all, has an epithelial lining and an underlying lamina propria. This lamina propria appears to be sort of dense, irregular, and is highly vascular. Lots of little blood vessels are there. Now, let's investigate this epithelium, see what's going on. So even at distance, we can see that the epithelium is stratified in nature. So this is a stratified epithelium, beautiful. What we want to know is what is it? Stratified cuboidal, stratified columnar, stratified squamous. What is it? For that answer now, we look at the most apical cells. Remember now, once you've decided that the epithelium is stratified, you're not interested in any other cells now except for the apical ones. Those ones will tell you specifically what the epithelium is. So, those I'm looking at are umbrella shaped, globular in shape. And so I conclude therefore that the stratified epithelium is transitional. Alright? We have to be very careful. You can easily confuse this with stratified squamous. But remember that for stratified squamous, the apical cells are flat. Okay, what else can we say about the epithelium here? So it's transitional, often described as urothelium. Some people call it that, urothelium. But is there any specific feature about this epithelium apart from those apical cells? Well, the answer is yes. So functionally, one feature is that the cells are urine-proof. Urine-proof. And that makes sense, right? That makes sense because urine tends to be quite caustic. And if it were freely able to diffuse through those cells, the underlying lamina propria will just vanish in a couple of minutes, right? Good, that's number one. Number two, though, is a structural feature of some of these cells. Some of the cells are binucleate. But some of the cells of the urothelium are binucleate. So when you're ready to look on your slides, you can sit down and look for some. Alright, moving on now. Alright, let's take it on. Okay. Alright, so note the highly folded nature we said of the mucosa. Also, these globular umbrella shaped cells are very important too because they change shape on distension of the bladder. So I guess you could say it's an adaptation for the function of the bladder for distension, right? Then we go to the muscular coat. And the first thing you must always say about the muscle of the urinary bladder is smooth muscle. Okay? So anytime you see any muscular structure, your first job is to decipher what kind of muscle it has. So this muscle is smooth muscle, involuntary muscle. Number two, muscle, as you can see, is organized in what they call interlacing bundles. So it's a sort of intricate weaving thing, lots of little bundles interweaving with each other. But although it appears like that, the muscle layer of the bladder is organized into three distinct layers. So we have an inner longitudinal, we have a middle circular, and an outer longitudinal. Okay? So inner longitudinal, middle circular, and outer longitudinal. It doesn't appear that way, as you can see, but you should know that. I would say the only slide that you can actually see and appreciate is inner long, middle circular, outer long, with the glass difference. When you come to the male reproductive, you want to look at the glass, and you will actually see the three layers. Now the urinary bladder and parts of the ureter has the same three-layer appearance, but it doesn't look that way. Also observe that in between the muscle fibers we have lots of connective tissue as well. So it's not just a layer purely of skeleton of smooth muscle like what we will see in the GI muscle layer. There's some interspersed connective tissue there. And then of course outside now we have your uterus serosa, as you can see, with the mesothelial lining that I'm pointing on there. Alright? and two little blood vessels here and there. Another thing about the bladder too, you may find calcium corpuscles in the wall if you look. So one of the other exercises you should try to do is to look to see if you can actively find any calcium corpuscles there. And then look what we're seeing here now. See that and that. So what can we say about what we're seeing there and pointing on? Those are what? Ureters. Ureters. So you'll recall that the ureter has an intramural part. And as the name suggests, it's in the walls of the bladder. So that's the intramural portion of the ureter. Alright? Yeah? Alright. Sometimes if you're lucky again, you may find a ganglion or so in the wall. But there are lots of things to look for on your slide. Alright. Moving on. And finally now we look on the ureter. Alright, so panoramic view here of the ureter. One or two little things to note. Has a stellate-shaped lumen. The ureter tends to have a stellate-shaped lumen. Epithelium still transitional. Still have a nice huge lamina propria deep to the epithelium, and pretty much the same sort of arrangement of the musculature. So it's smooth muscle, and we can see the interlacing nature of these muscle fibers. You also see between the fibers lots of connective tissue. Outside of that, it depends on where you are in terms of if it's intramural or not. You may outside may just have adventitia. Note for this slide we're not seeing a lining, we're not seeing a mesothelial lining, we're just seeing connective tissue, indicating that this is adventitia. Alright, lots of blood vessels, one or two little nerves there. See a nice artery and a vein. An arteriole and a venule. Good, so that's ureter. Now, people always ask, how do you know that's not bladder? I guess it could be. Could be, but I think most animals' bladder would be a little bigger than this to get all of it on a slide. Unless it's the bladder of this bladder or something. Alright? But usually you don't get the entire lumen of the bladder. It's a little too big to hold on one slide. Okay, but it's possible, I guess, but depending on the size of the animal and so on. But usually, if you have a lumen, then I think you should think more ureter. Okay? Is there anything you could confuse this slide with? Under the old curriculum, when we used to, every exam, you get every system all mixed up. At this distance, this could potentially be vast difference, right? Unless you look at the wall a little more carefully and the epithelium. What else? Vagina, maybe. But remember, vagina is lined by stratified squamous. Remember, the vas is also lined by stratified columnar pericilia and things like that, right? So the differentials that you would think about when you see a slide like this and they say you can't touch it, you can't move it or anything, then you think that you could say vagina, it could be vas, it could be ureter. But looking at the first of all, looking at the epithelium, I would rule out vas. Vas has pericilia. I'm not seeing anything like that here. But vagina, maybe at this distance, you could confuse this with vagina. Alright? Okay. Dr. Thomas, loading 3, do you have any other things to add? Dr. Sud, anything else to add? Doctor? Yeah, I mean, any comments? Any comments? Patrick?
I don't want to put you on a spot. When you explained that the relationship between the organs, the apparent urinary and the macular densa.
Right, so, yeah, the sad thing is, that, let me go back to this slide. As I tell you guys, I have seen a slide stained with PAS. That